So the second lawsuit filed by Katherine Feinstein is she's acting on behalf of her mother, Senator Feinstein, using a power of attorney, suing for Senator Feinstein's rights as a beneficiary under her late husband, Richard Blum's trust, separate property trust. And Katherine's option, because now that Senator Feinstein has passed away, the power of attorney she's using is no longer valid. So her only option is to file a probate so the court can grant her an order that she is the executor for Senator Feinstein's estate, and she can then continue that lawsuit. Any money received through that lawsuit will have to go through probate completely and get itself into Senator Feinstein's estate because it was due to her during her life.
Welcome to Absolute Trust Talk with your host, Kirsten Howe. Absolute Trust Talk brings you tips, tools, advice, and interviews to help you build a reliable knowledge base on estate planning, business, and finance to start preparing for your future today.
Hello, and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk. I'm Kirsten Howe, and I'm here with Madison Gunn. This is a special celebrity edition of Absolute Trust Talk. We've gotten lots of positive feedback about a few episodes that we've done kind of recently where we talked about celebrity or famous persons' estate plans. And for example, we did one about Elvis Presley, and I heard from a lot of listeners that they really, really enjoyed that one. And frankly, we really enjoy doing them. They're fun, less dry than some of the other episodes that we do. And the other thing is there are always lessons that we can pull out of these studies of celebrity estate plans. So we're here today to do another one of those. We're going to talk about the estate plan of Senator Dianne Feinstein. She died last week, as you probably know. And what we're going to focus on today is there is some litigation pending between the senator and her deceased husband's estate. And so we're going to talk about what happens now to that litigation now that she has passed away. And just as a recap, in case you missed it, Dianne Feinstein's husband, Richard Blum, he died about a year and a half ago in February of 2022. And he had two trusts that we know about. The first one was a joint trust with his wife, Senator Feinstein. Just like everybody else, a joint married couples trust. It owned some property. It owned their home in San Francisco, and it owned a vacation home in Stinson Beach and some other things that aren't as relevant to this conversation. So he had that joint trust. He also had a separate trust, and he was in control of that. That was written by him. He could change it anytime he wanted. It owned certain assets that aren't really relevant to this conversation either. But so he had two trusts, a joint trust and his own separate trust. The joint trust said, when Richard dies, we're going to split this joint trust into two shares. One is Diane's share, one is Richard's share. Diane's share goes to her separate trust. Richard's share goes to his separate trust. And those properties that come from the joint trust are going to be held in trust for Diane's benefit for her lifetime. She gets all of the income from those properties, and she also gets additional trust property enough to make sure that she gets $1.5 million per year. So she gets the income plus probably some principal to bring her up to $1.5 million a year. Okay, so that's the basis. That's the trust background. Seems fairly straightforward. And yet, as I said, there is litigation. So Madison, talk to us about what the litigation is. Well, there are two petitions. Let's talk about the first one.
Yeah. So the first petition is regarding the joint revocable trust between Senator Feinstein and Richard Blum. It was filed by Katherine Feinstein, who is the co-trustee of the trust, and it was filed against her other co-trustee, who is a fiduciary. She's saying that the trust has not been split. So obviously she's saying that the trust hasn't been divided in between the Richard Blum separate trust and Dianne Feinstein's revocable trust. She's also alleging or requesting that the court give them permission as trustees to sell the Stinson Beach property, which is very specific. It's the only specific asset point of the petition that they brought up.
Right. And so the joint trust owns 4 properties at least that I can think of, but the only one that is specifically addressed in the petition is the Stinson Beach. Senator Feinstein's daughter, Katherine, is asking the court to say, you got to sell that property. Why are they asking for that?
Yeah, because the property is to go 50% into Senator Feinstein's trust and 50% into Richard's trust. Senator Feinstein at this point is not looking for a vacation home. She's not interested in using it. So she is not wanting to pay the costs associated with that. Taxes, upkeep, maintenance. Not that any of us have houses on the beach, but they have a lot more maintenance than our regular homes inland. A lot of saltwater upkeep.
You gotta repaint it every year. Yeah.
Yeah. So she is not looking for that, and she wants to sell the property. She's not using it. So it's now just considered a vacant property. And under the separate trust where the property is to be held in trust for her, she is the only one allowed to use it. So she wants to get rid of it.
Okay. Now let's talk about what will happen to this litigation. Katherine Feinstein, co-trustee, suing her co-trustee now that her mother has died.
Right. So this litigation will be able to continue because she's the co-trustee, before and after Senator Feinstein's death. That doesn't change who the co-trustee is or who the trustees are in general. She will be able to maintain that lawsuit. So the trust provides continuity for the trustees, which allows them to just continue on to administer the trust, or in this case, continue on with the litigation to force the administration of the trust.
Okay. All right. And as I mentioned, there are two petitions. That was the first one. Tell us a little bit about the second one.
Yeah. So the second petition is also filed by Katherine Feinstein on behalf of Dianne Feinstein. But in this case, she's filing it on behalf of Senator Feinstein using a power of attorney. And it is not as any type of trustee. It's filing it on Senator Feinstein's behalf as a beneficiary of Richard's separate property trust. So it's a little bit of a different mechanism, even though it's still, Katherine Feinstein versus whoever the trustees of that trust are. And there she is suing for Senator Feinstein's rights as her beneficiary. One, because that trust hasn't been funded per the first lawsuit, Senator Feinstein is not receiving that $1.5 million in income income and principal that she is entitled to. And so that is obviously an issue. I think the news has been putting it out as she's requesting her medical expenses be paid. It's just that she was due this money, she didn't get paid, so they were asking it to be reimbursed out of what she would be owed. So in this case, she's filing and also filing for an accounting, which beneficiaries are typically entitled to in a trust administration. Both cases are fighting for the trustee to do their job.
Basically, right. But in the first instance, it's the co-trustee saying, hey, my counterpart here isn't doing their job. I'm here. I'm ready to do my job. He's not doing his job.
Right.
In the second case, it's the beneficiary saying, you got to pay me my money. And it just so happens that the beneficiary's agent under a power of attorney is doing this for her. But it's really Dianne Feinstein is the petitioner.
Right. Because she's the beneficiary.
Right. And okay, so with this one, what's going to happen now that Senator Feinstein has died?
Right. So as we've discussed on here before, power of attorney is only good as long as the person granting that power is alive. So because Senator Feinstein passed away, the power of attorney that Katherine Feinstein is using to initiate the lawsuit is no longer valid. And then that means that Katherine no longer has the grounds or standing to step in her mother's shoes to maintain this lawsuit. So she will have to file a petition for probate in the court in order to become named the executor for Senator Feinstein's estate. And as executor, she can then step in her shoes for that lawsuit. Essentially, any money due to Senator Feinstein as a result of winning that lawsuit would have been owed to her during her lifetime. And so the only way it can go to her, let's say her trust, would be through her estate, which is the legal word for probate, or what we're using it for.
Okay. So Katherine has to open a probate in order to have the legal ability to continue to pursue this lawsuit on behalf of her now deceased mother and recover the money and also be able to negotiate whatever check is written to Senator Feinstein. The check will be written
to the estate of Senator Feinstein. And so her will then say where that check goes.
Okay. And we don't know. We haven't seen her will. Okay. So now we've learned a few lessons along the way. First of all, avoid litigation. It's not good. But secondly, Madison, let's just encapsulate this a little bit.
Yeah. So to summarize, there were 2 lawsuits filed by Katherine Feinstein against Richard Blum's estate or his trusts. In the first lawsuit, Katherine Feinstein is the co-trustee of the joint trust between Dianne Feinstein and Richard Blum, and she is suing her other co-trustee for inaction. And now that Senator Feinstein has passed away, that lawsuit will go on because Katherine is still the co-trustee and the trust provides continuity for before and after death. So she will be able to continue that lawsuit. So the second lawsuit filed by Katherine Feinstein is she's acting on behalf of her mother, Senator Feinstein, using a power of attorney, suing for Senator Feinstein's rights as a beneficiary under her late husband, Richard Blum's trust, separate property trust. And Katherine's option, because now that Senator Feinstein has passed away, the power of attorney she's using is no longer valid. So her only option is to file a probate so the court can grant her an order that she is the executor for Senator Feinstein's estate, and she can then continue that lawsuit. Any money received through that lawsuit will have to go through probate completely and get itself into Senator Feinstein's estate because it was due to her during her life. Now that we have the complicated litigation regarding Senator Feinstein and her late husband, Richard Blum's estates summarized, we wanted to take an opportunity to discuss an estate planning lesson that results from this that has an application to regular old people like us. Kirsten, what is that opportunity, the lesson that we learned?
Well, I would say, and we read these 2 trusts and they're very well written. They're very complicated. It seems as though they thought of everything. And yet here is this problem. And I think that perhaps there was not a conversation within the family about, well, what do you want to happen to this Stinson Beach property? We see this a lot. Real estate tends to be a problem. Trying to keep real estate in the family. Some want to, some don't. Maybe a conversation could have happened while both Dianne Feinstein and her husband, Richard Blum, were alive, and sit all the kids down. What do you want? That sets expectations, if nothing else. Maybe the parents wouldn't want to accommodate the children's wishes, but at least the children would know ahead of time, this is what's going to happen. Also, if what he wanted was for Senator Feinstein to have as much flexibility as possible, he could have said in the trust, if she wants to sell the Stinson Beach property, she gets to. There just are a few, sort of planning opportunities. I think that communication is probably the takeaway, that the more you can communicate about what you want, what you think your kids want, the better. Oftentimes, being surprised is a big part of why people react badly. Not so much because of what is said, but because they didn't see it coming. Right. So communication ahead of time, I think, is the lesson here.
That surprise results in high emotions.
Yes.
And that results in lawsuits.
Exactly. Very good. Okay. And anything you want to add to that, Madison?
No, I think that was great. I'm sure much more will shake out over the next several months.
Yeah, we'll keep you up to date. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com/scheduling. Don't forget to keep an eye out for our next live episode in 2 weeks. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcouncil.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.
This podcast is not meant to take the place of legal advice from an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you do have a legal question or issue, please consult with an attorney.